Welcome, guys, to the So Good It's Bad podcast with your host, Chaim Samuels. Me. Woo! We did it, guys. Wow. Uh, I mean, what a journey it's been, you know? Going from episode 1 to now episode 2. There's just so many people I want to thank just for helping me along the way, you know? How you doing, guys? Very excited to post the second episode of the So Good It's Bad podcast. And today we actually have a guest. Yes, indeed. Already second episode, and I'm already bringing on guests. I think very highly of myself. I'm very excited actually to bring on this guest. His name is Dr. Josh Matthews, and he is a professor. And one of the subjects he teaches is film. And I discovered his YouTube channel like 6 or 7 months ago. And I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really unique. You know, the way that he breaks down movies is at a very intellectual and like how a teacher would. And I thought it would just be great to have this guy on the podcast when I started this. You know, I thought it would just be great, and he'd be like the perfect guy to talk about one of my favorite topics to talk about, which is movies. And so we sit down together, and I think we have a really good talk. A precursor before I launch into the podcast. Unfortunately, we had like so many freaking issues during this thing, you know, like my phone kept shutting off a few times, and so the audio's, you know, was a little bit out of sync. So I was able to edit it down, and I think for the most part it's pretty listenable. But just so you don't hate me and you don't, you know, get too annoyed, I'm still getting the kinks out. All right, God, get off my back, Mom. I'm still getting the kinks out. So. But yeah, for the most part, I was pretty good on editing it down so that it's definitely listenable. And I think if you can get past some of the moments when the mic kind of fades in and out a little bit, and sometimes I'm like fixing the camera, there's a little bit of noise in the background. If you can get past that, it's a really interesting conversation. And if you love movies just as much as I do, I know you'll have a really good time listening to the both of us. He's a really interesting guy, and I can't wait to have him on the podcast again. So without further ado, guys, let's just get into the interview. Yo, man, I'm here for the podcast, I don't really give a motherfucker about the podcast. Put your hands up for the podcast. We gon' really do it for the podcast. I don't really give a fuck. Put your hands up. And we're live, man. What's going on, Dr. Josh Matthews is joining us. How you doing, man?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. That was very professional, the way I just started that off. It didn't need to be.
I don't care. You can call me whatever you want.
Yeah, what should I... Josh? Is that good?
That's great. You know, on the YouTube, some people call me bruh. If you want to do that, yeah.
Bruh? Well, you come off as a bruh, obviously. I get what they're talking about. That's great, man. So really excited to have you on the podcast. I discovered your channel like 6 months ago. What really intrigued me about your channel was that you don't just review movies, but you're a professor of movies, and I want to get into what that means exactly. And I found it really intriguing that you like the way that you review movies is not just you sit down in front of a camera and like say, oh, I liked it or I didn't like it. Like you actually delve into it in a more like kind of interesting and in more depth type of way. You know?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's actually my training, and probably most people who go through all graduate school and literature, which is what I did, will be able to read carefully or closely read. So I'm more, even if I hate a movie, there's a lot of other things I can observe about it. I was just telling in class this yesterday, like they're ragging on Hallmark movies. I don't watch Hallmark movies, like every plot is the same, but you can pull out a lot out of Hallmark movies, culturally, socially, psychologically, even if you absolutely hate it. And so, yeah, that's part of I think that's part of the appeal for some people of this channel, learning about movies, is that it tries to, you know, explicate or help open up film for other people just to see what its ideas are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very intellectual way of looking at it, which I love. And I'm totally down to talk about movies with you and get really into the nitty gritty. Part of the reason I started this podcast was because my brothers hate watching movies with me because I'll just pause it every 10 minutes and be like, oh, so you know what I like about this? They're like, just shut up. Just save it for the podcast. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get this guy on, and we're gonna talk about the nitty gritty, nerdy stuff about podcasts and all that good stuff. But first, actually, I want to talk a little bit about your background. So, you're a professor. What exactly does that mean? Like, what is? Take
Yeah.
me through like what do you teach in your class?
It's I am a professor at a 4-year university in the United States in Northwest Iowa, but I teach a little bit of everything. So film is only one of the things I teach. But I teach an introduction to film class as sort of a film appreciation class, and that is the genesis of the channel. But I have a training in I was an early Americanist, like early American literature broadly speaking, and I teach now all kinds of things: Italian Renaissance, Dante, and so is business writing. So one thing I just did with this channel, just so you know, is I took the course content that I had for this course and put it started putting it on the channel. Now
Hmm.
anymore, that's not what I'm doing. I'm just doing my own thing on the channel, but that was the impetus for this. Um,
Yeah.
but I've always loved movies. I mean, it's been just a casual movie watcher as a kid and watching them as a college student, and then as a whenever I was in my life, I was always interested in
Yeah.
film. So I started studying it more intently. And so,
Right.
yeah, I'm not a film studies professor as that as it might seem, but I am good enough to bridge the gap, let's say, between what academia says about film and what the
Yeah.
ordinary person on the street. So, for example, in my channel, I mean, what I have like 5 people as in mind when I create a video. It's like my mom, my good friend who's a professor, the friends down the street, these sorts of people who are like either intellectual or they're casual or both. So that's my
Right.
hope with this. So that in fact that's
Yeah.
the kind of students I teach too. They're curious, but they're not going to go study film or make films for a living.
Right. Yeah. Uh-huh. Okay. That's really interesting. Well, I mean, but I do think, with that being said, it definitely could speak to somebody who, because it speaks to me. Like, that's kind of what I want to do. I love acting and filmmaking, stuff like that. And watching your channel does give me that. Like, I watched The Squid and the Whale. I just watched that pretty recently.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, great movie. And I went and I was looking for an explanation, and I saw that your channel actually had a good explanation. I remember watching through it. I thought it was a really good analysis of it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
No,
hundred
it's a
percent.
wonderful movie. It just it's the kind of movie that I watch and I go, okay, that's literature. It's
Yeah.
not any different from reading a class. It is, but it's not a classic Victorian novel, an acclaimed
Yeah.
work of literature from the early 20th century. It has all those like, character development, the plot, and it's
Right.
connecting to the real world. So I kind of just analyze it in terms of like my background, like graduate school, and
Yeah.
then try to, as I said, bridge the gap to people who may not know or be uncertain, and but yet want to know a little bit more about a film than just whether one I liked it or not, and two, could we be entertained by it?
Yeah, yeah. No, what's his name? Noah Baumbach. When you watch his movies, there's something I love when directors build a very particular style that is unmistakably theirs, and I think his movies are like unmistakably his. He's got that. I don't. Yeah, there's just something very. He's got something very realistic when it comes to his dialogue and the characters that he builds.
The Marriage Story is an amazing movie. That
Yeah.
I in fact, it's probably better if you're married or have been married.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm waiting to get married because I saw that movie, and I'm gonna be completely honest. I thought it was good, but I don't think I related to it at all. I was like, I know I'm gonna have to be married for this movie.
That's the thing about film. So yeah, early in life you watch a movie and it doesn't connect with you, and then later it does because you've had experiences that are like what's in the
Yeah.
movie. But yeah, Marriage Story is great. Yeah, I like his. You're speaking to something that's really mysterious about film. Even literature, it's a little more clear. I think we're written novels, let's say, but film, it's like, well, there's 1,000 people working on a film, and yet somehow it becomes this unique vision, and then over a
Right.
director's career, that's
Right? How do they do that? That is.
Well, yeah, that's a classic auteur theory. And how does that work? Especially given that there's so many people who have input on a film, but it's detectable over a director's career. So yeah, Baumbach has made enough films where we can kind of figure out his quirks and interests in particular style choices.
Maybe it's working with a lot of the same people. Also, that's probably what it is. Like you have a very particular. I know. I think Tarantino, which I would probably say is my favorite director. I know, shocker. Yeah,
No, that's great.
I'm being kind of new here saying that. But Tarantino, I think it works with like the same editor or something like that. So, and it definitely shows, guys who kind of get their style and everything like that.
Yeah, I also think it's just story choices, setting choices. Obviously, Scorsese just loves New York City and mobs.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Tarantino. I don't know what Tarantino likes. I got to think about that. But Baumbach in New York City. These kinds of things where you play to
Yes.
strengths. I think that helps.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Baumbach, whatever his name is, Baumbach and Woody Allen, they both they both love New York, but they kind of shoot it in very different ways. That's what I kind of love about those two directors. It's like Woody Allen has like a romantic view of New York City, I'd say. And I think Noah Baumbach has a very I don't know, like very kind of Upper East Side, like a bit artistic way of looking at it to some extent.
I don't know. That's where your experience in New York City comes in.
Yeah.
Or no kidding. I mean,
Yeah.
but you're dead right. You
Yeah.
have the same subject
Yeah.
matter, and yet it can be shot like
Right.
100,000 different ways. You're
Right.
right. Woody Allen is definitely romantic. I think he is, although he's got
Yeah.
the existential, the dread of death thing going on, which is New
Yeah.
York City's kind of both at the same time. It's an
Yeah.
alluring place, but it's
Yeah.
what
Both of them don't. Both of them. I don't think I've ever been to New York because it's nothing. I mean, I live in Brooklyn. That's not the New York I live. 100% not. They live in a very different New York than I do, apparently. Um,
yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
but
well, you're speaking to an interesting issue, which is that if you've seen a movie but you've experienced that place or that thing, and
right.
movies are not really reality. I'm sorry to tell people. They're although they can tell you what it feels like to be in a place, but they're really to me the dreams and ideals. I think that's where Woody Allen is right. I think he believes that they're the dreams of a place. So, yeah, I've seen a number. I lived in the Midwest most of my life, American Midwest, and I don't no, even Nebraska. I don't know if you know that movie, but it's not quite right.
It's not. Are you saying Fargo is not?
Just,
Is that not a good
even
depiction?
though they're from around there. I
Yeah.
mean,
Right.
Minnesota. Yeah, they have a totally. Oh, have there been any murders up there ever? I don't know. I mean, probably one in 50 years. But in that movie,
There's been no murder. There's been no murders in Minnesota. It's a lie. Oh, well, that kind of ruins the movie for me. I'll tell you that. That's it.
there are
Yeah. Well,
shady
you know what?
car dealers. I'll tell you that there are shady car dealers.
Yeah, those exist everywhere. It's funny. It's funny you say that. Yeah, because I have this segment where I talk about. It's called ex Hasidic Jew reviews Hasidic Jews in movies, and that's where like growing up we'd watch movies with Hasidic Jews, and 95% of movies, 98% of movies get it horribly wrong. Like they do not depict them remotely close, and I always find it really funny. And I go through like movies and different scenes with Hasidic Jews, and then I'll break down, and be like, "That's not right. That looks terrible. Wrong hat, wrong jacket." But to somebody who doesn't, I guess most people don't know Hasidic Jews. To them, it's just like that's a Hasidic Jew. Um, I find that
Oh
really
no,
fascinating.
I have a thing. I really should do it on the channel at some point. I have this idea like a video where don't watch a movie where it's depicting your profession or your vocation because you'll just
Right.
hate it. Or you have like, very likely English
Yeah.
professors. I mean English professors in movies. We can complain about that for the next day. I mean, they're always like these single guys having affairs with young students. It's But they're always wowing their student audience as well. Like
Right.
they're the Robin Williams thing in Dead Poets Society. They're like wildly
Yeah.
inspirational. That might happen to you one time in your life if you're lucky.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So, but as I said, it's a dream, right? You know,
Yeah.
and everybody is.
Right.
It's the dream of the English professor, I guess.
Yeah, I guess yeah. People kind of write what they hope or they hope things kind of are, or they like even when you usually write your story or you write something that's kind of personal to you, you like to embellish it to an extent where you like to kind of be the guy you want to be instead of actually
Yeah.
who you really are.
And I think there's certain elements that on film because it's such a visual medium, as well as a sound medium, work really well. So I don't know about Hasidic Jews. I would think some of the visual components that they have, then they become exaggerated or they become the thing to focus on. I have a little theory that Catholics in movies, the Catholic priests stand out. It's harder to. Okay, Christian pastors are just bland all over the place. They just wear suits. They look like business people. Or I'm talking about
Right.
Protestants. Protestant pastors, but Catholics stand out like Catholic priests because they have the garb, and you can know who they are instantly. And then they become, something in movies, a visual key or cue, and you know exactly who they are instantly. So I think that's really, it's really interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is that way the Hasidic Jews though? Do you think they
Oh.
stand out and
Oh, it's hilarious. It's really bad. It's funny. We never look. We were never the people to take offense. My brothers and I, we just think it's really, really funny to see a Hasidic Jew and be like, okay, I'm that guy. I'm a Hasidic Jew. I don't know what that is. It's not. It's not what they think it is. I always thought that was funny. I'm really curious. How did you get into? What made you decide to get into YouTube? What?
oh, uh, I was a YouTube hater. Actually, I loved it at the beginning. It was a video library. It was the internet video
Right.
library, but then it became taken over. It's like TikTok maybe now or
Yeah.
like 6 months
Oh,
ago.
we're on the same page, by the way, man. I'm on TikTok. That whole wave of TikTok and stuff like that. We're about
Well,
to sound like a bunch of old men right now, but
it gets taken out. Like it gets stupid real quick.
stupid. Yeah,
And
right.
the YouTube comment section were notoriously bad, so I avoided them for a while, years and years. But I had a friend who's a pie in the sky visionary, and he's like, "You should take your course content, as I said, and put it on the internet because you've already developed it. It should be easy to just adapt." So that's actually I experimented for a few months with it, trying to figure out exactly what it would look like or be like. How long should it be? Is a question like how long should these videos be? What's the content exactly? But after about 3, 4, 6 months, I started actually figuring out somewhat.
Yeah.
I think I'm still figuring out, but I started 2 years ago, and I really like movie reviews. I've always loved them, going way back to reading them as a kid, which is weird. But I like and so now I like making them. I'm still figuring out my voice and style, but also I like these analysis videos as well,
Yes.
which are simulations to an extent of a class. I mean, it's not quite, but sort of. And yeah, so I started out just kind of fumbling around, and one thing I had to do was learn to edit videos because I didn't know. I never had edited videos before. Thankfully, I had enough tech knowledge I could do it. I wasn't scared by it, but that would be a barrier to entry. Otherwise, like maybe people as young as you or younger, it's like no problem. So just get on and do it and get your reps. That's what I
Right.
did. If you look at my old videos, they look primitive. Like they're this webcam. I'm using a webcam now. They're primitive, but
Right.
I got another camera I bought, so it looks way better. It's just incrementally getting better over time as well. So I'm only 2 years in. I figure I'm still learning.
Dude, you're doing terrific for 2 years in, man. I mean, I've been doing it for 2 years as well. I just hit 1,000 subscribers, but you're already at 22. Like that's really that's a good place to be, man.
Well, but I'm not doing what I want to do all the way. The way to get. I don't know if you know YouTube, how well you know YouTube, but you got to cater to the searches.
Right.
So I'm still doing these single movie videos. Like here's a video.
Right.
You mentioned Squid and the Whale, although that's not being searched very much, but
Right.
something that would get a hit. So any classic movie is still getting hits. But I would like to do many other things. Yeah, breaking YouTube. I don't know. How do you do it? I have no clue, really. I'm still fumbling around, but
Right.
I'm just glad that people are finding the stuff and interacting with me. It's been quite fun.
Yeah, it's really cool. But look, dude, you're doing something right for sure. No question about it. Like
Thank you.
honestly, like most people, really, like I'm happy to get to 1,000 subscribers. I've done it before, so um, and it's cool to do what you really love, and people see what you like to do and stuff like that. But there is something to doing what you do and doing something that is really unique, because again, you're not just doing movie critiques, you're actually doing analysis. I love those types of videos also. That's why I think I gravitated towards your channel. But you're doing something that's very unique to you while still being in the range of, well, he's still talking about movies and stuff like that. And I think that's kind of why you stand out to a certain extent, because I don't know any other channels quite doing what you're doing.
I felt that there were some. That's part of the reason why I got on there. It's like well, every frame of painting, that channel, which is defunct. There's been a number of good
Yes.
but defunct channels. I
Yeah.
think there are some channels that are, but a lot of them are more about how to make a movie and how a movie works as far as the
Right.
technical skill that involves creating a shot or something like that, which is very valuable for people making movies. I'm just more like I really am. What does my mom or what does my friend down the street
Right.
think? Because they're just viewers, and how does that work when you're just a viewer absorbing a film? So I and also YouTube is a great medium for film period because it's video to video. I mean, actually, this is another reason I got on there. One of my struggles, I was using a textbook in class, but a textbook is not the right medium to discuss movies. I mean, it can be helpful, but it's the printed word, right? And so
Right.
that's a totally different medium than the sight and sound of film. And so with
Mhm.
YouTube, obviously, you can show clips of movies. That's something a textbook cannot do.
Wait, hold on. So wait, you were like teaching. You like used to teach a class out of a 10. You'd be like, turn to page 5, and in this scene, that's what happened, and
Well,
instead of
or
showing them.
yeah, or that it has a description. Here's what a jump cut is, and I'll
Right.
describe it in words.
Ha.
It's way better
Wow.
just to show
Oh
it.
my God. How did you teach? How did you ever teach
Well,
like
you
that?
can do it. It's just you have to. Also, students don't. I mean, surprise, don't like to read as much as they used to.
Yeah.
It's not as common these days.
No.
Yeah.
That's really interesting, man. Okay, so did you ever want to get into filmmaking? I'm really curious about that. Or did you ever consider becoming a filmmaker?
Oh no 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 no! I never have ever thought about that. Sounds honestly, that's way too hard. Like, how easy would it be to sit down and write a novel? Well, you could do it. Poetry, whatever you want to do creatively, but making a movie, it's like you got to talk to people and be around people. I am a
Yeah.
100% introvert. I just don't like to be around people. Period. I know this sounds strange because I'm a teacher, but um,
Right.
although these days, I, probably if I were 20 years younger, it'd be tempting just because the
Right.
technology is so easy to use and it's cheap.
Right.
I think what you're doing is trying to make short films or something like that, and it's really accessible and easy. I think for me,
Yeah.
I never thought about it because it was you'd have to break into the industry back
Right.
30 years ago. But no, I've never had the itch to do it. Never
Well,
ever. I like being a
right.
viewer.
Okay. No, fair enough. You know what you want. I would think it's really interesting because you love movies, and believe it or not, like you have a platform right now where I've seen this is a growing trend where filmmakers are now putting their stuff on YouTube.
Oh yeah.
Like, and that I think that's going to be the part of the new wave. We're seeing like a bunch of
Totally.
Netflix and Hulu, but I do really think that filmmakers will just start to put their stuff on YouTube.
Oh, absolutely. Why not? There's no barrier
Yeah.
there. You can just
Right.
upload and go, and then the algorithm takes care of
Right.
marketing and finding people to some extent. Um,
Right.
I
Especially if you
yeah.
have, especially like a channel like yours, like you already have a following. People know you, and like they'll. I'm convincing you to make a movie now, but like people know. Or just in general, like if you could build a platform. Part of why I want to do YouTube is that like I'm building a platform so that I could put out the type of stuff, and I can build an audience for myself. I think that is really the new wave.
I had a guy write to me the other day, and he asked, okay, how do I? He's in his 50s, which is interesting. How do I break into the film industry? And I said, I have
Yeah.
what I told him. I have zero connection, so I wouldn't have a clue
Yeah.
how to get one person into the. But I do know that you can buy a camera for. It sounds maybe like a high amount, but a few $1,000,
Yeah.
and then have video editing software and have decent audio, and then there you go.
Yeah.
What else do you need? I really yes, the indie movie industry has been around a long time, and I think about a movie like Pi, like the mathematical symbol. I don't know if you know that one. Darren Aronofsky, didn't he make that for $10,000 or something like that? Even for cheaper than that. And there's
Right.
been a number of great movies, I think, that
Right.
were nothing. There were shoestring. Clerks, for example, is another one.
Right.
But that's
Rodriguez.
time
Yeah.
ago. I think you're right. Yes, anybody who's interested in making movies, one, you have my channel and all these other ones with basically movie
Right.
textbooks. Here's how to make a film. Here's how to create a story. Here's what stories mean. Here's how to create characters. Here's what characters can mean. And then you just take that information, because you can teach yourself and run with it. You don't.
Yeah.
I know there's people who go to film school. I don't know how much that costs, but you don't necessarily have to do that.
Right. Yeah, I think you don't have to if you're motivated enough. I think everything I've pretty much learned is either been pretty much on YouTube, or I did this independent film with a friend of mine, and I just got to see him direct, and that was such an eye-opening idea just to see somebody doing it practice. I think the great thing about it is today is you really don't have to go to film school. I think, although I've never been to film school, so I wouldn't know, but I've no
Well,
idea.
it'd be helpful to have connections and all that, but probably not. Probably not.
Probably take that money, invest it in something else.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Says the guy's never been to film school. Let me ask you. So, do you have I'm gonna get into your favorite films and talk about that in a little bit. Is there a favorite? Well, I want to get into that. Is there a favorite directors that you have? Any particular
Oh, yeah.
directors?
Yeah, I get asked this question a lot. I think it's probably changing over time slowly, but at the moment, and actually, this is probably a function of my age. I'm sure, because I would actually like if you talk about the age gap difference. It's really fascinating to me how many students I have who love these movies, and I don't like the movies that they love. So I recommend. I really like the Polish director Kieślowski. I don't know if you know him, but the Decalogue is and the Three Colors trilogy. I think he's a combination of everything. He's entertaining, but he's highly sophisticated, great at everything. Actually, that's what I'm looking for. If a director is great at sight, composition, editing, and all the movement and all that, but also sound. And I think the great directors are great at audio, and not just. I mean, obviously, they can hire a composer who can make a great score, but also sound effects, a whole soundscape environment. And I was just watching Star Wars, as I told you earlier, and the first one, and that's what George Lucas was great at, was the soundscape is amazing in that. Now, is that because he hired people who were great and he had an eye for like Ben Burt on that, created the lightsaber sound effects and blasters? But so I like Kieślowski, I like Tarkovsky. I'm looking at my list here. Kurosawa. These are the staples. Hitchcock.
Right. I never got into Hitchcock.
Young people, and that's part of the channel, is to go to. Okay, there's been a number. If all movies stopped production today and they never made another movie ever in the future, you have enough movies that have been made that are really amazing and will blow your mind. They're visionarily, they're great. You can just feast on those for the rest of your life. Not that they should stop making movies, by the way, but that is a claim of mine. There's enough that have been made.
Maybe they.
Past.
It's okay if they slow down. You're saying it's all right if they slow down a little bit. We still have enough to go around.
No, not necessarily. I think there's been a lot of great movies. In fact, maybe the last decade has been as great as any other. Really, I mean, there's a lot of trash.
Yeah, you know what? Right.
No, really, there's a lot of trash out there, so people gravitate toward that or say that, well, Hollywood is formulaic, they're making all these franchises, but there's a whole world making movies, and I think the last decade's been quite good too. So don't stop, but it's just there are a number of people, especially young people I know, who avoid the past, or any movie from before 1990 is too old. Black and white movies, well, that's really old. That's a typical, and I have ordinary college students in my class. Like that's a typical sensation. Like if I show 3 black and white movies in a row in class, they're mad at me because they're watching old movies. But yeah, but there's different ways to watch movies, and it's not just for pure entertainment's sake, as maybe Netflix or Hollywood are trying to create movies that way.
Is there any movies you can say, let's say over the last 10 years, any movies, I'll get into your top like 5 favorite movies, but I want to get into first, is there any, what would you say are some of the best movies in the past, let's say 10 years, you can put out there and say, by the way, I agree with you, yeah, I agree with you when it comes to the director stuff, like absolutely, I've to me, like that's what I do now. If I want a good movie, I just look at like the best directors and stuff. But yeah, so 10 years, man, what would you say are some of the best movies you think? If I were to come to you now and say, look, I'm looking to put together a collection. I'm going to an island, and I need the top bunch of movies in the past 10 years. What would be some of your suggestions?
Yeah, I'm gonna sound a little snooty here. I feel like I'm a scholar. I'm a scholar who likes to be a completist. So I feel like I haven't seen hardly anything. I would like to watch everything first. But I can definitely give you, I keep a list on Letterboxd. I don't know if you use that, but Letterbox with a D.com, and I keep these list of the best movies of the 2010s and 2020s just for myself, but maybe I'll use them one day. And so I'm kind of staring at these. Oh gosh, this is hard because one thing about this is, I'll just name movies. I shouldn't qualify everything. There's a movie I really love, and I don't know if it's great or not, but Nightcrawler is great. I don't know if you've seen Nightcrawler.
Yes.
I really
That's a
appreciate
fantastic
that
movie.
a lot. It's just it taught me a lot. I would say this is a movie where I learned some. I feel like I learned something, or I had it expanded my vision. I could feel it expanding my vision of. I didn't really. I know there are movies about the TV business, and TV of the news business, but this one, it somehow clicked for me. So maybe this is a personal choice. But also the same thing about Her. I think Her is a fabulous movie. I don't know if you know that one. It's Joaquin Phoenix falls in love with his operating system.
Great movie. Yeah, great.
I still think about that
That
movie.
is more relevant than it is. Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally. Totally. It's more relevant, and it may keep being more relevant. Set in the future. I think this came out in 2015
that's why I
or
love guys like
2012. I don't know,
Tarantino or
sometime
Woody
around
Allen. They're very
there. I
personable.
find that to be the thing about that movie, as well as a few others. The director Alexander Payne, he does this too. I love about this is this. It's got this razor's edge where it's both satire and serious at the same time, and it's really hard to not be either all funny and making fun of something or all serious. Like most movies, if they're gonna do both, they're gonna have split up the serious parts and the humorous parts. And Marvel does that, or common blockbusters. But these movies are right on the edge. Every single frame of the movie is both satire and serious. You can make fun of it, and you can see the seriousness of it. That's what I absolutely love. It's very hard to do that. So I think Her is great. Oh gosh. I watched the movie recently and I thought this could be great. I have just only saw it once, which was The Father. I don't know if you've seen this.
Yes.
It makes
I've
you
seen
feel
all. These are all good choices.
It makes you feel like you have dementia. I mean, that both Father makes you feel like you have dementia. This Sound of Metal, actually I have it right here. Sound of Metal makes you feel like you're going deaf.
Honestly, another great movie,
like
man.
You're going deaf, you're losing your hearing, and you are that's the great thing about movies. This is what Roger Ebert said about them, that they're empathy machines. They give you the sense of what it would be like to be somebody else. I feel both those movies are important, especially The Father, because it does simulate the dementia aspect, and it makes you understand what it'd be like. And then you start thinking about, if I start to get dementia, what would I want to remain on this earth? It has these serious existential questions behind it. I find fascinating,
Yeah.
a little terrifying, and I kind of like that. So I think that there's been several movies like that where they're doing. This is where I think the historical development of movies is going. It makes you feel like better and better that you're the person in the movie, and sort of simulates their reality really well, better than movies of old did. I think movies of old, more character dramas, the good ones, I'm generalizing obviously, but they're more like novels. They're more like plays or theatrical, productions. Where movies, as the medium on their own, can do something else and get you to be that person. So yeah, what else am I missing? I only named 3 there. I mean, we could keep going on this topic forever because I just love. I'm looking at a Turkish movie, Winter Sleep. This is a fabulous movie. I don't know if you've seen it. It's so slow. So beware. It's so slow. I mean, I don't know what's good or what's not, honestly. I just like what I like. But yeah, I have arguments for them. And that's probably the main thing. You were talking about this earlier, which is just you love or hate a film. You just have reasons and you explain and you have whys. Here's why, here's why, here's why. So there's a lot of ways you can go with that. Now, I just like The Father a lot because it's one, well made, two, it really does simulate the dementia patient or something like what you would think that's like. Now, maybe it doesn't, but I'm guessing it's closer than what we've had before. There's a lot of great movies, though. There's no end to them. But I think these days, this is my sense. I'm not maybe wrong, but there's more disagreement about what's good and what's not good than there used to be. And maybe that's just because, and I don't think this is bad, fragmentation. You have your likes because of where you're from or whatever, and I have my likes because where I'm from. So I think there's and what we prefer as far as it could be political or cultural or something like that. So I like The Hand of God from this past year. I've said that many times on the channel. I thought that was a great movie on Netflix. And I don't know, I like Terrence Malick, so I think his last several releases have been great too. Yep.
Terrence Malick, yeah, that's an interesting writer.
Yeah, he's hard to get into. I mean, there's a question in film: is film a story-based medium or is it sight and sound? And then if it's just sight and sound, it's nothing wrong with that. You can just shun story or not have as much story or just have the aesthetic experience is trumping the story itself. Yeah. Now, of course, it's not great for business. Most people prefer. I think this is borne out over time, especially since movie industry is a business and it needs to have a lot of people, to buy the tickets or buy the films. It's going to be story-based or something that is more relatable than a sight and sound experience. But nevertheless, you have something like 2001: A Space Odyssey, which does not have a story, really.
Yes, it is so funny. It is so funny you bring that up. I've always had a hard time getting into Kubrick, and I think for that reason. Like, he is just one of those guys where he just drives me crazy because he is a fantastic filmmaker, but like 2001: Space Odyssey, like people are like, it's amazing and it's incredible, and you have, and to me it's just like I don't get it. It's just it for me it's like I that's why I love guys like Tarantino or Woody Allen. They're very personable, very much about characters, and he's just like, him and Nolan are just like, nah, forget about characters. You don't need characters.
Oh, 2001, the main character in that, the most human character is the computer. That
it's a freaking computer. Yeah.
It's a computer who's manipulative and who dies. Spoiler alert. Yeah. Now, you shouldn't say you don't like Kubrick on YouTube because you're gonna have 1,000 trolls come at you. And
no. Okay, let me rephrase what I have a hard time getting into his movies. Now, it's not that I don't think he's a great filmmaker. I think he is. And there are definitely some films I like of his. I like Dr. Strangelove. I thought was a pretty brilliant film, especially it's so ahead of its time. I thought there was another movie. Full Metal Jacket. Yeah. So I thought those movies were fantastic. So again, I think for me personally, I'm not saying he's a bad filmmaker. He's just sometimes incredibly difficult to get into at times. Yeah. So we could talk for hours, but I want to get to the closer now before my phone shuts off again or whatever happens. So. Give me your top 5 favorite movies. Do you have a list of them? Top 5 favorite movies.
I just did a video on the top 10 I would pick for the British Film Institute poll, and people can find that on the channel. Although I don't know if that's the top 5, like my 5 favorites. So there's a difference between like the 5 movies I preserve in a time capsule, the 5 favorites, whatever. So you can check that one out. I love The Thin Red Line, and I've always have. I think it's somehow it speaks to me for some weird reason that I don't know why. It's a total guy movie that's World War II. It has a dreamy quality to it, and he asks very strange questions in it, like is dying good? You know, is there something good about dying? That I like Malick a lot, but that's my favorite of his. Almost certainly, this is where I get a little trouble because I like Rashomon for all kinds of intellectual reasons, but I don't love the movie as an entertainment experience, like a personal experience. So that's where I had that in the top 10. I said almost certainly Groundhog Day, probably, because when I was 14 years old and saw that movie theater, it was like one of the first experiences I can remember where it actually had me going, okay, what did I watch and why? What is it saying to me? Before that, I really had never had those thoughts or questions. And I don't know why that movie did that to me, but like that movie is, of course, about how to live your life, which is a very general question. But for a 14-year-old who's becoming an adult. So what did I say? Groundhog Day, Thin Red Line. I don't know. There's there's hundreds. So it gun to my head. I just love the movie Grizzly Man so much. Other people don't, because the guy in the movie. Have you seen this movie Grizzly Man or not?
I haven't seen any of the movies so far you've said, which is funny, but I haven't seen that. Okay. What's Grizzly Man?
You haven't seen Groundhog Day?
No, you're right. I've seen Groundhog Day.
Seen that one? Okay. Yeah, Grizzly Man is a documentary Werner Herzog made about a guy making movies of himself in Alaska, and he's going out to Alaska for years and hanging out with grizzly bears. He actually goes up and touches them. He talks to them. He names them, and it's so weird to see a guy who YouTube making movies of himself, apparently trying to become. Is he an activist?
Did he get killed by a bear? Is that what happens?
Yeah, so the movie goes over that. That's not a spoiler. Yeah, he gets killed, but the question is, why did this guy go do this? Like, why did he go and try to touch and hug grizzly bears? And Herzog has his own point of view, so you have two different point of views in the movie. It's the guy himself in his original footage, and you have Herzog, making his own judgments. But then I have my own judgments on what Herzog's doing, what the guy's doing. I think it's a really interesting movie. It really provokes me. So that one. I will give you this. So no, you probably don't know what this is, but it's this. I'm trying to look it up. The Samurai trilogy, Samurai 1, 2, and 3. You watch them all together. They're from the 50s, and they're really brilliant. I love them a lot. There's a lot of great samurai movies, but those and. After that, I don't know what my fifth one is. It probably changes from day to day. So anybody can go on my Letterboxd account and look up my list. I got a list like 200 movies I love and 200 movies I recommend. So I could probably pick any of those and be happy.
Yeah. Well, okay, man. I very much appreciate this. My phone is gonna die in 2 seconds, so I want to make sure that it doesn't cut off or whatever. I don't know what's going on today, but I want to just say
thank you so much.
Honestly. Yeah, I can talk about movies with you for hours.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do this again. I wish you the best success on your venture here, and I actually like your podcast episode. I hope people keep watching your stuff. By the way, what's so good it's bad? Is there any movie that's been so good it's bad? That's what I was trying to contemplate as I was looking at your title.
Maybe. I don't know. That's a real. Let's save that talk for the next podcast we do together.
Sure. Okay. Well, thanks a lot.
Yeah. I'm really happy we did this.